Sketchup is a tool that was created for designers. It was created so that you can be loose and fast and free, or you can be incredibly precise, or anywhere in between. However, it is not a CAD program. Also, let me say before we get started here, notice the toolbars on the side. You'll see there are very few tools. This makes Sketchup easy to learn and, more importantly, easy to relearn for the occasional user. So as we get going here, let's start off. I'm going to click on the pencil tool to activate it. And with SketchUp, you can start drawing anywhere you want in the scene. We're in a top view and we start off. I'm going to click to anchor the first point on the line. As I pull away in the direction I want to draw, if it's parallel with an axis, it turns the color of that axis. So either red or green or any arbitrary angle. Notice too down here in the right corner, it's a numeric readout. This is the value control box, and it's always telling me how long that line is from where I started. So I'm going to pull it out in the red direction, and right now it says it's 17 foot 11. I could type 19 feet at this point and hit enter, and it adjusts the line to be 19 feet long. Or I could retype and say 16 feet, and it readjusts it to that length. The rest of this time in this demo, I'm not going to show you numeric readouts, but you can keep an eye on them if you like. Now, as I move over the line, when I go over an endpoint, the cursor dot turns green. And if I'm somewhere in the line, it turns red and tells me I'm on the edge. And if I go to the midpoint, it turns cyan and reports to me midpoint. This is really important. As you're touching on edges and connecting them, you need to make sure the dot is the color indicating it's on the edge before you click. If you're slightly off, the edges won't connect and the program won't work properly. I'm going to come out to this endpoint and click to start drawing. And this time, instead of going in an axis direction, I'm going to go off at some arbitrary angle. And then as I pull back, I want to go in the red direction. As I continue pulling, notice when it gets below the second point, I get in what we call an inference direction, and it's a dotted green line from that point. It's telling me I'm directly below that point along the green axis in the green direction. SketchUp's designed to quickly infer points from other points so you can create geometry on the fly without having to worry about setting a particular snap setting. So let's try clicking there. And now let's say we want to draw parallel to this line instead of orthogonal to it in the red and green directions. I touch on the edge, and as I come back off, I move it until the cursor shows me a pink line that says parallel to the edge. And now as I swing upwards, I can be drawing parallel to that edge. And if I pull out to the side, it's now perpendicular to that edge. Or I can continue down in the green direction. I was able to draw orthogonally based on other geometry without having to rotate my axis. This makes it very easy to create multiple directions in SketchUp without having to switch your coordinate system. I'll continue moving over, and I want to be below the first point I started from. It's not sure how to infer that point. All I need to do is move the cursor over that point till the highlight turns green to tell me it's found the endpoint, and then move downwards again. As I come down, it turns green to let me know that it's found that inference direction. So I can click at this point, and now I know that point's directly below the initial point. As I come back up, I'll close the shape. When I close the shape, it fills in the shape with a color. This is analogous to putting skin on the shape. This is a very important feature of SketchUp. Whenever you form a closed boundary of edges, it gets filled in as a surface skin. Now let's look at the Move tool. Any geometry can be moved around. Notice as I move over things, they become highlighted. This is called active selection. Now I can move, I can select something, just click on it, and I can move an edge. Here I'm moving it in the red direction. And I just click again when it's where I want it. Or I can move a surface, and I can also move by dragging it. I just click down and hold my mouse, move to where I want the object to be, and let up. So I've performed a move. I can also move a vertex. I'm going to move this back again. And as I move over this vertex, it gets highlighted, and I click, and now I can move it at some arbitrary angle, or I can move it in a direction of an axis into the green, or let's move it in the red direction. And I click again and it relocates it. Now let's look at the pencil tool. I'm going to select the face, select the pencil tool. Now a line can break a surface. I take the pencil and draw this in. I touch on the edge to tell it that I want to be parallel, and wait until it tells me parallel and pull it down until I hit that edge. And I click. That line has broken the surface into two distinct surfaces. It's also broken the edge that it touched into two separate edges. This is a very critical point in Sketchup as well. Any edge can create other geometry, break it apart, and you can continue making other forms based on existing geometry. If I click out in space in a blank area of the screen, it clears the selection. Let's look at the erase tool. I can click on an edge to erase it. When I erase that edge, the surface that it bounded also disappears. If I want to correct that and bring it back, all I need to do is put that edge back in, and Sketchup Face Finder completes the face. I can erase multiple edges as well. To do this, I hold down the mouse and I just rub over the objects I want to delete. Once I've rubbed over them and I let up, it performs the erase. Okay, I'm going to draw that edge back in, only this time I'm going to draw it in perpendicular to the slanted edge. So I just touch it, move over until it's perpendicular, click, and then click again to finish. And it creates a new surface. Now let's look at the Move tool. Before I was moving an edge or a surface, I'm going to move this surface, which is attached to other surfaces. As I move it, all the connections stay in place based on the object I'm moving, and the others adjust to reflect their shape off that move. Now, what if I want to copy something? Well, in SketchUp, the Move tool acts as the copy tool as well. All you need to do is hold down the Control key while you're in the Move tool, and I click and pull away wherever I want, and it creates a copy of that geometry. Use the Option key on the Mac. Now, something unique about SketchUp is the way edges and surfaces are treated separately. I'll click on several edges, but I'm not selecting the surface. I'm holding down the Shift key so I can select multiple edges. And now when I use the Copy tool with Move, I'll hold down Control, Option on the Mac, and click. You notice that I'm only making a copy of the edges, and I'm not making a copy of the surface. Edges are separate from the surfaces they define in SketchUp, and this gives you a lot of flexibility in display and presentation. We'll cover that later. So I'll click out in space to clear that. Now say I wanted to bring that surface back, I simply trace over one of the edges, and the surface is filled in. Since these edges did not touch each other at their endpoints, this surface is separate and distinct from that surface. So I could use the Move tool and move this surface anywhere I want. It's not been locked to that other surface. Okay, let me just start a new file here. I'm going to draw a sample box. So I take a pencil. I'm just going to drag in the red direction, drag down in the green, and I'm clicking at each point, and that allows me to continue drawing a chained event of lines instead of one line at a time. I close it and I get a shape. Now I'm going to show you the next tool I want to show you is Orbit. Orbit works analogous to grabbing my workspace. Over here I'm going to click and hold down the mouse button. As I push up, I can tilt my workspace. Or I can grab the workspace over here on the left and pull it left and right, or up and down, in any fashion I want to view the model. Okay, I'm going to draw in a vertical line. Most common mistake beginning users make is they don't watch the axis inference directions. Notice we now have a blue axis. If I just eyeball this line in and say, well, that looks pretty good, I'll hit escape. Now I'm going to draw in another one. I'm going to start here and draw in the blue direction, but this time I'm going to make sure I'm in the blue direction. I've drawn in that line. Sorry about that. Now if I take the orbit tool, I want to take a look at it. That line was actually drawn in the plane where it started, whereas the other line is truly in the blue direction. You always want to make sure that you follow the axis direction. This is the pan tool. So I'm going to take the eraser and erase that edge. Let's go ahead and finish putting in the lines for the corners of our box. I'm stopping when it turns green to infer that it's the same height. When you're drawing in perspective, oftentimes lines will look incorrect that really aren't. You need to trust the machine to create the geometry the way you're wanting it to by its rules and not try to force it. Now, right there I'm having trouble locking on that direction, so I'll undo with the undo. I'll just change my viewing orientation. Now as I go in the blue, I know I'm the right height. Now I can trace these edges in any order I want. Again, in the 3D space, it completes that surface just like it does in plan. So I'll continue drawing. Now I can draw, as I'm drawing a chained event, and I can't quite see it, I just spin around, grab the pencil, and I'm still in the line tool. I have two surfaces here that are missing, but as I trace in this last edge, since it's shared between the two surfaces, they both get completed. So we've shown you three tools right now: the pencil tool, the orbit tool, and the erase tool. These are really all the tools you need to get started and be successful with SketchUp. Let me just show you very quickly how I might use these to draw a roof. I'm going to take the pencil tool, and I'm going to eyeball this gable in. So I start drawing. I look over here. I say, yeah, that looks about right. I come down here, and it didn't fill in. Well, the reason is, again, we didn't pay attention to the axis direction. Since it wasn't on an axis, it puts both those edges in the same plane as the original surface I started from. So I'm going to undo 2 steps, grab the pencil tool, and this time I'm going to create a reference line for myself that goes up in the blue direction. So now I know that point is off the surface in the blue direction. Then as I complete the surface, I get a completed rectangle just like I expected. I can draw in the other side. I'm waiting till they turn green to make sure they touch. This is one way to do it. Let's look at another way. I start drawing from the corner, and this time I'm going to touch over the midpoint and then pull up in the blue direction and let it infer that direction for me. Now I know that's directly over the midpoint, so in one step I can close that surface. Let's spin around and look at the back side. We'll do another method here. I'll take the pencil tool and I'll start from this point. This time I'll touch on this edge on the other gable to tell it I want to draw parallel to it, and I move my cursor until it turns pink and says parallel. Then I just continue moving up the parallel direction until I get confirmation that I'm across from that red, or from the other peak. I can click again, and it completes that other gable end. And then I can complete both sides of the roof by just connecting the peaks of the gables. Okay, this is the Zoom Extents tool, and just simply zooms out so I can see everything. Or I can zoom out a little bit more with just the Zoom tool by holding down the mouse and moving downwards I zoom out, moving upwards I zoom in. I'm going to zoom out a bit. Now I'm going to orbit back around so I can investigate my form. Okay, let's put an addition on the side of this form. I'm going to start with a line. I'm going to start drawing out in the green direction, but now I need to get closer to see it. All the zoom commands are transparent, so that means while I'm in the line tool, I can zoom in and still be in the line tool and continue drawing. So I'm going to draw up in the blue. Now watch as I pull back in the green towards that face. Sketchup knows when I've hit that face, and it turns blue with a blue dot. This is a very powerful feature of Sketchup, that it can tell where an edge intersects a face. I'll continue in the red direction to this edge. I'll continue outwards in the green. I'm going to draw in the top of this addition. It turns blue because that's the inside direction, so I'll just select it by right-clicking, context clicking on the Mac, and reverse the face so it looks like the same color as the other surfaces. I'll start drawing downwards now. The blue direction. I can draw back over, and I've completed the roof in one side of the addition, but notice it's still hollow. So I can take the pencil, go from endpoint to endpoint, and fill that in. But this back side still isn't filled in because we don't have a completing edge. So I'll take the pencil, complete that edge, and it closes that surface, or that form. So now we've drawn an addition on this house. So, it's easy as it can be. And there we go. We've just modified this form. So you can do a tremendous amount of modeling and design work with just 3 tools: pencil, orbit, and erase. And we'd suggest that even though we're going to show you a complete overview of SketchUp as we carry on here, for those of you that are new, we suggest that you just focus on these 3 tools, get comfortable with them, and get comfortable with inferring, and then start playing with some of the other things we're going to show you here. Let's say we wanted to modify this roof to a sloping roof. I'll just start with the pencil, trace it on the surface, trace from there back in the red direction, come back around, draw from endpoint to endpoint, take the eraser, scrub out those lines. Look at that. Okay, go ahead and watch the remaining tutorials, but with this basic vocabulary of edges, erasing, and orbiting, you should be able to go miles in SketchUp.